Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is SeYeoung. I am particularly pleased to be invited as the honorable speaker for this conference, since I was one time as the host of this conference as the president of CARIS. I'm going to share my ideas with you about the new trials of LiteRacy, NumeRacy and DiterRacy, which is the pedagogical base of the Korean smart education. The next slide you can see, we have the questions. Do you have 21st century skills? No. Then do your kids? Maybe not. Well, but now you should know at least your kids at least would have. In fact, every day, people talk about 21st century skills. In order to get them, at least, you must know what they are. I tell you by listing some of them from the books, newspapers, and great persons talk. They are creativity, collaboration, critical thinking, and even computational skills, and so on and so many. Well, they are so good enough to dream of. However, it is the problem that the way to cultivate skills is not job at all. Actually, that is the history of our humankind and education. In the next, let me tell you about the background stories why Korea has initiated smart education on June 29, 2011. Before that, I'm going to share some small experience about PISA you may once heard. I was a member of the technical group for EAD, Education at a Glance. The third edition of EAD in 1995, it was the bestseller of OECD. And there was a big shock in the world, specifically for leading countries like the US and Germany, about their low student scores in the test. So that they were looking beyond the teams. And there was consensus for cross-subject assessment, which is eventually the birth of PISA, Program of International Student Assessment. And there are two heroes, Finland and Korea, we know. But as you see in the next slide, there are still unsolved questions by PISA. However, as you know very well, there are many unsolved questions. Does a PISA test the right thing? What are the 21st century skills? Can they be assessed? How can school teachers teach in the classroom, by the way? The questions are continuing. And recently, OECD is trying to answer by a PR project in its report. In this project, it is questioning what others can do in literacy, numeracy, and problem solving in technology-rich environments. In the next slide, we can think again about Finland and Korea. Well, they are good, but there are the questions, what are the commons between them and what are the differences between them? There is no answer yet. My possible answer, they are very common in good reading literacy of the same letters without illiteracy and with the same people, very homogeneous. But they are different in some way. I think that is the balance of literacies. And I'll tell you one more about Korea in the next slide. Korean education has many strange indicators, even though we have very good record in PISA. Government investment in public education is relatively very low. Students show the lowest learning motivation, specifically in math and science. And families are spending too much in private tutoring because of so low confidence in school education. Let me add one more in the next slide. More interesting figures from OECD report with the recent PIA in comparing with the PISA. Young adults among those big three countries in education, Korea and Finland and Japan, they are doing so and quite similarly. However, Japanese adults do better than those Koreans, even with the same educational background. We need to think why. One possible answer may be the low effectiveness of Korean school education. This is the reason for innovation. One striking difference in the next slide, you can see Korea, which is very differently from Finland and Japan, is leading in their digital reading skills of specifically youngsters. We should use this for some kind of innovative action for the 21st century. So that is the background of June 29th Korean Smart Education Project. In the next, we can see the Korean Smart Education Project is a kind of very comprehensive project, and it is based on the historical experience of the 20 years try to use ICT in education. In the next slide, you see that we have 29 June 2011 Korean Smart Education was pronounced. As you can see in the next slide, it is kind of a comprehensive policy package to innovate for classroom evolution through smart technology. It has 3 areas and 5 pillars. Under the reforming educational system, it is designed to develop an reforming educational system. Online classes and assessment are promoted, and building a cloud system of open educational content was also included. Of course, teachers' role is very much strengthened for their competencies of using smart technology and utilizing for classroom teaching. And lastly, under the improving school infrastructure, it was planned to build a cloud computing practice in education. But as you can see in the next slide, the smart education concept is quite ambiguous and vague. And so we need to develop and articulate certain sort of pedagogical background. So the 5 letters of SMART are articulated into their respective dimensions of education. So S for self-directed, M for motivated, A for adaptive learning, R for resource enriched, and lastly, technology embedded school infrastructure. And we have the question then, what will be the pedagogy behind the smart education? Let's go to the next slide. The pedagogy may be new tools of education may be necessary. So from this idea, I try to say again today about the new literacy, new system of literacy beyond the basic 3 R's. That is literacy, numeracy, and DiterRacy. Let me go further into some details with some more slides in the next. Actually, as I opened in the beginning, there is no clear answer, at least for me, about the 21st century skills learning. I think it is because we cannot understand what they are telling us. The great Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu said, once you say the truth, it is not any longer. This tells about the impossible mission of teaching and learning. One more example, a reporter is asked, a great dancer, "Sir, what did you try to say with dance?" The dancer replied, "Why do you think I danced if I could say it?" So, as you see in the next, the pendulum of the two balancing power between 3 R's and 4 C's. Please allow me to be a little provocative. I'm an educational researcher who is some sort of uncomfortable with the big jargon of 21st century skills. Those creativity, character, communication, collaboration actually has been already with us over the history from Socrates and Confucius. We, the teachers, have been struggling to get it. We need a good tool and method, not a beautiful objective. Reading, writing, reasoning actually are the traditional tools to get those 4 C's plus alpha and those creative jargons. So, as you see in the next slide, the history of our education is the inventing the basic tools. The tools we used to teach, they were language, or scripture, when we say they are letters and numbers and all kinds of media. All these media is used for education. I mean, teaching and learning in education. But as you know, education is ever difficult because actually the tools used by education is as difficult ever. So we need another sort of easy tools. Let's go to the next slide. Let me think about again the balance between the literacies and this kind of 4 competencies or the 21st century skills. The basic 3 R's may not be sufficient as enough as for 4 C's. So literacy and numeracy was okay. Maybe we need one more. So I put it and I invent 1 DiterRacy. And I am proposing you today the DiterRacy as a new kind of very important literacy. But it is not literacy, so I call it DiterRacy. Well, let's start with the literacy in some details from the next slide. Before 21st century, I think education is the function of literacy. It means that if you have more literacy, then you are more educated. But for the literacy acquisition, you can read, you must write, you can read well, and you can reckon or you can count very well. So these are the subjects in the schools, okay? And after 21st centuries, I think education is sought to be the function of 21st skills, but as I said, how to get it? Well, literacy and numeracy we have, but the reason why students and people are struggling every day because the tools to get 21st century skills may not be enough. So then maybe the literacy. So what is the literacy? The literacy, as you see in the next slide, is a skill to read and write. One, remember how you were happy to read and write your name, and you are still happy to read and write your name in foreign letter. You see the 4 great letters which developed the glorious human civilization, pyramid by hieroglyphics, and Hammurabian and Sumerian civilization by Sumer cuneiform, And so wonderful meaning letter of Chinese character for Confucius civilization, and Roman alphabetics, very logical and very good, very abundant letters for creating Hellenism and humanism. Well, I put one more for Hangul, as in the next, you can see the beautiful and very scientific tool for Korean people's literacy. I'm sure that this perfect literacy tool is the secret of the Korean miracle of the economic development in the 20th century. And numeracy, and the next one, is to count complex words in number. The number is called as the logic and order of the world. In the next slide, you can see the music was the mother of the number, and Parthenon and the Newtonian galaxy, there is the number, there is the order. This number and order is accused by the numeracy, so-called by mathematics and science. We know, in the next slide, this number and mathematics is developed or invented or discovered by Pythagoras, the Pythagorean theorem. And Ian Stewart tells us there have been 17 great mathematical formula with numbers to have changed the world so far. We know all of us how difficult they are, which only the great genius knows. Although still young children, young kids are struggling in the schools. Now I'm proposing DiterRacy. DiterRacy is a tool of yours. Let's go to the next slide. You can understand as you see, hear, and feel. What is the DiterRacy? Let me think about. I think it is related to the computer tools. This is just a proposition. So before go to the DiterRacy, let us see one very famous picture, the Mona Lisa and the Michelangelo's. Well, I'll tell you one secret of painting. You see, the oil painting was the mother of the glorious, for instance, French Impressionism. And why was it possible? People says maybe it was because of the techniques of painting. It was from fresco techniques to oil painting. What is the secret of the oil painting? That is oil painting. Oil painting means painting and painting and painting till you won't get the best result of yours. So what I mean is that the techniques and tools is the important before your competence. So I think the new DiterRacy means you can, for instance, you can draw a picture, or you can express your story, or you can tell your experience to your mother, or to your kids, or to your friends, with many kinds of skills, just instead of letter or writing or numbering. So in the painting analogy, people says maybe it is a layer. I mean, the overpainting means kind of a layer. So let me see in the next slide. Here are the examples of such kind of tools of DiterRacy, I call it, in an avatar. I mean, this is a video tool, and Photoshop, like image tool. All these imaging and video tools in these days, the very, very ordinary people, even the youngsters, can draw a very wonderful picture and even design beautiful video clips. I mean, already, image and video is not such a difficult job for expert only one. So this is the tool for DiterRacy to express your ideas in the more efficient way. This is why what I'm suggesting as the DiterRacy. So in Korea, in the next slide, there was a lot of stories and experience and the trials in the schools, by the school teachers, by so many people. They are asking what is the smart education, what is the 21st century skills. And I tell you, we are not quite sure yet, but we are trying to get everybody involved in understanding and expressing these new tools. And the Smart Education Society is in every year to share our experience and teachers' experience with the student in drawing and expressing and singing and dancing with the tools, just instead of writing and solving the formula. So this is the one story from South Korean Smart Education Society. Yes, this is the Facebook, or this is online, this is the cyberspace, this is a smart society where we can design our new world. So how to go there, how to reach there, that is, we should acquire another kind of literacy. I say that is the DiterRacy, as digital literacy or ICT literacy. This is my talk. Thank you for your kind attention, and I welcome your brilliant questions. Thank you.